Hey, welcome to another episode of Your Faith and Health Community. I'm your host, Pastor Jackie Jackson. As always, on behalf of myself and our producer, Anita Alexander, we want to thank you very much for taking out time from your day to spend with us. And prayerfully, we'll give you some information or we'll say something that'll change your life. Now, before we get started with my special guest, Mr. Don L. Jordan, I want to just ask you real quick, did you get enrolled since the last time I seen you? The last time you saw me, I guess. Have you gotten enrolled in health insurance? Did you get Medicaid? If you're eligible for Medicaid, you know if you're single and you have an income of $16,228 or less a year, that makes you eligible for Medicaid. Now, if you are a family of four with a combined income of $45,558 a year, that makes your whole family eligible for Medicaid. That covers dental, vision, emergency room, hospital visits, prescriptions. It covers it all. And especially if you're like me and you wear glasses, you want to make sure that you have that covered because they could be real expensive. So if you haven't gotten insured, get insured. Now, we're headed into November, which means open enrollment is going to start if you're going to the marketplace. Now, if you don't fall in any of the income guidelines that I just gave you, and you want to go online and look to see for your specific income where you fall, if you fall in Medicaid or you need to go to Marketplace. When you're going to Marketplace and you're looking for insurance, you want to do some pre-work. Know who your doctors are. Know what prescriptions you take, because believe it or not, every prescription is not covered by every insurance. It's crazy, but it's true. So you want to know what prescriptions you take, what doctors you like going to, even what hospital do you like going to. You want to make sure that everyone's in a network, because you can have insurance, you go out of the network, you're going to get a bill. So I'm going to say it one more time, get insured. And if you don't want to do it for you, do it for the people that love you so that you can have coverage. All right? I'm going to leave it alone for now, but I'll be back with it next week. So I want to turn to our guest, Donald L. Jordan, and I want to thank you very much for being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
And you are a dad, a husband, but you are also a law enforcement professional, but we're not here to talk about that today. But I just want to make sure that I mention that because of the work that you all do, the men and women who are out there on the streets, and the work you do is important, and we need to make sure that we honor. The Bible says give honor where honor is due, so I want to make sure that I honor the work that you do. But we're here to talk more about you being a parent and about you being a member of the community and the work that you're doing out in the community. So let's talk a little bit about that. I know you have a son. How old is your son?
My son is 11.
11 years old.
Yes.
And what's his name?
Avery.
Avery?
Yes.
I got a friend named Avery Hammonds. We call him Avery.
Yep, I say that sometimes.
Okay, so we didn't create that. I thought we came up with something unique.
Well, he's probably older than my son, so you guys probably had it before, way before I said it.
He's way older than your son. But so he plays sports.
He does. He plays basketball.
Okay, it's something that I'm not good at.
Well, he's pretty good at it.
Okay, and so using basketball or using the sports, that's one of the things that you use with your son, because when we were talking earlier, and I'm just going to kind of maybe paraphrase that you needed to get involved or be a part of the solution in the community because you do have a son.
Well, so my wife and I have been together 26 years. We're coming up on our 20th wedding anniversary. So Avery came, I think, maybe 15 years in of our marriage. So we had Avery late. Both of us are almost 50. He's our only child. I didn't want to bring a child into the world because I just thought it was so chaotic. And when she told me she was pregnant, it was a shock to me, for one. But when my son was born, it was quite frankly the best thing that ever happened to me, and it changed my life. I worked out 5-6 days a week. I was in the best shape of my life. I had a good-looking wife. It was just the two of us. So we traveled the world. We did all the things that a couple would do beside having a son, our child. And when my son was born, all of that changed to the point where my focus wasn't on doing anything but making sure I gave my son the best life, or provide my son with the best life possible. With that being said, I calculate everything I did from that moment moving forward, even till now. So yeah, we have a basketball team. I started the basketball team because I want to influence his circle of friends. It's the AAU basketball team. We play for Midwest Takeover. I'm very specific about who I have around my team, who I have on my team, because it's not just about the talent of the player. I'm interviewing families too, because if they're going to be around my child, I want nothing but the best people around him. And so the core of our team have been playing together since they were 5. They're now 11 years old, 6th graders. And those are his brothers. So yeah, we travel with them, and we've built a bond. And so I know we took a couple kids to Duke, North Carolina,
Okay.
their basketball camp, Duke's basketball camp in North Carolina, over the summer break. Avery and 2 of the other players. And my wife said, we're not doing this again, because we're responsible for these other people's children. You know, they spent the night on the campus. We had to check in with them every day, but it was a great experience for them. And I said, no, you're wrong. We're going to do this again, because what you don't realize, the rewards, you're putting deposits into these kids that's going to be so rewarding in the future, you have no idea. So it's not about them playing basketball now. It's about them being exposed to this college life. So in 20 years from now, somebody tap you on your shoulder when you're in line at Kroger's and say, Miss Jordan, you remember you took us down to Duke? These are the positive rewards you're getting. So we're going to continue to do whatever we can to influence his circle of friends and the other kids around him, because I know if we build them up, he'll be okay.
And, you know, and I think that's real important, and sometimes a lot of people forget. I can make my house as safe, my household as safe as possible. You know, it could be none of this and a lot of that and a whole lot of love and no negativity, but my son or my daughter, they've got to walk outside of the house.
Absolutely.
So if I make my whole household safe, but past my front door, past my yard, it's not, then I'm really not, I'm helping my child in a sense.
Right.
But my child doesn't live at home unless I'm going to hold them captive, which goes into a whole different set of problems, right?
Right.
So working on the community, working out there to make sure not just your child, but there are a lot of young men in the community who don't have a father at home.
Yes.
And I give all the props in the world to a single mother.
Absolutely.
My mother was a single mother. And so I give props to a single mother. But at the end of the day, that young man needs to have a dad. But that's not the case everywhere. And so you taking upon yourself to say, I'm going to make this better for my son. But in order to make it better for my son, I've got to reach out into the community and make the community better. Right. And so putting together a basketball team, like you said, which promotes teamwork, discipline, all these things that are important to actually living in a world, but at the same time, it helps to give some love to a group of young kids who, not saying that everyone's parent's not there, but for some kids on a team or some kids in a community center or whatever they're doing, you're always going to find someone who that reach where you think, I'm doing this because it protects my son, and God's going, yeah, but you're actually doing this because I figured about 80 gazillion billion years ago that you're going to be an influence in the community. And there are a lot of positive black men in the communities, not always doing something in the community that benefits the youth on the street.
Well, my grandmother raised the 5 of us. I'm the second oldest of 5. My mom died when I was 9 years old. My father was in prison 6 months after my being born to 6 months prior to my graduation from high school. So that's 18 years. The fact that my grandmother gave up her life to raise the 5 of us, I wanted to always show my gratitude towards my grandmother. And all of the neighbors in the community that helped raise me, because it was hard after my mom passed, knowing that I didn't have a mother anymore. And the fact that Miss Jennings, Miss Newman, and these other women and some men in the community recognized that we were lacking, not having our mom and my grandmother needed help, they helped. So that community piece is there. I'm always going to be, I feel responsible. There's a responsibility for me to give back. Like I said, my grandmother didn't have to do it, she did. And oftentimes, like if you were to go to my office where I work at, I have gym shoes in my office. I still work with young people. My son, he's growing so fast. He only wears his basketball shoes on the basketball court. So in a year's time, he might have grown. Last year, I think he went through 3 different sizes. So I have anywhere from an 8.5, 9, and a 9.5 shoe, basketball shoe in my office that's gently used because he's only worn them on the basketball court. If a kid comes in, needs some shoes, if he can fit them, there he is. You know, my wife wanted to sell them to one of those consignment shops. I'm like, no, we're not going to sell them. We're just going to give them to somebody that need them. And that's just one of the things I believe in giving back, and it's a blessing in being able to do so.
And that sounds good. And you know, and it's also good, the Bible talks about when a man finds a wife, he finds a good thing. That in other words, it's when you find that mate, that especially that mate that God has for you, that's an awesome thing to have. So, and it sounds like you have that mate that God has said, okay, I'm going to make sure that I bless you with someone that can help you advance the work, that you're there, that can be beside you, that you guys can work together in this gift that I gave you, which is a son. You know, because that you know that's his child actually,
right.
But he loans us to us for whatever period of time that he so deems. So I think it's awesome that you have that. I want to ask, you know, because you can't ignore what's going on in the community with all the homicides and the shootings, which just seems to be escalating and escalating and escalating. And it's not that shootings in the community is something new. It's been happening in the community forever. But the way that it's going now, how do you work that with your son in terms of, you know, there are a lot of parents who are probably trying to have that conversation with their young son about the young children that are getting murdered, whether in the city or, I don't know if he watches the news, but what's going on around the country? How do you have that conversation with him?
Well, one of the things that my son has been a part of, and again, this is the first year we didn't do it over the last 7 years. I helped create something in Avondale called Pitching for Peace. And Pitching for Peace was originated behind the fact that at one point in time I did a lot of work in Avondale, which is where I grew up. And for 2 years, Avondale did not have any homicides. 2 years, from 2011, I think, to between 2010, 2012, 2013, they went without homicides. And that's a lot of work that I was a part of with Children's Hospital, all these different organizations that work together. And then, you know, God and a lot of other factors came into play, but we did not have a homicide. So I wanted to celebrate that. I wanted to celebrate the partnership, because it takes a lot of partnerships to invest in, and you had employees of different companies coming into Rockdale Academy helping kids with math. We were tutoring these kids because one thing we know of, the school to prison pipeline is real, so we tried to eradicate that by getting people involved, actively involved in helping out in the school system. And we did it. We did it at a grand scale. But getting back to the homicide thing, what I do with my son, besides every Pitching for Peace that I was at, my son had the microphone and welcomed everybody to Pitching for Peace. We are here to celebrate peace. I wear a peace bracelet because this is the way I walk. I walk in peace every day. But I talk to my son about love. It's easy for these guys that's out here killing people to do it because they don't value love. You know, if you value the person sitting next to you understanding that that person's family loves him or her just like your family loves you. And I tell him that I love him. And so he understands there's value in human life, and he wouldn't want to take a human life.
That's a good lesson, a good thing to teach. Well, before I even go to where I wanted to go, it's just something on what you said about valuing life, and that the ones that are out here just doing the murdering and killing they don't have love for themselves, you know. But you often hear, and I said in meetings with the work I do, you said in meetings, and sometimes we said in meetings together.
Right.
And everybody's looking for, yes, the solution, but a lot of times the questions of why, what's going on, why is this happening? And one, I think if anybody comes up with the why, to explain all of this stuff, I'm not going to be too inclined to believe it. Because one, I think there's a whole bunch of different whys. Right. A lot of reasons that people don't want to deal with. I often hear that if we just get jobs, that'll stop the shooting and the killing on the street. Well, the people that are doing the shooting and killing on the street are not interested in not the kind of job that you're going to get. And you know, say, hey, we have a job program. All you got to do is you're going to come in on the bottom level and you can work your way up. So we're going to give you $10 an hour, and they're going to go, yeah, no, you're not. So that's not the solution. Or you hear that it's mental health. Well, everybody with a mental health issue is not out shooting and killing
You're
people.
Absolutely right.
Right? Or it's post-traumatic stress, and that is a problem, but it's not the problem. So with the work or out in the street, because you're out there and you're working and you're seeing, you know, with your programs, the things that you're doing with your son, you're seeing what's going on out there. What do you think is? I'm not even going to ask you the solution, because I don't know if we knew the solution, there would be no question, right? But what do you see from your thoughts as part of the problem?
Honestly, I think we have a lack of leadership in terms of our homes. I was raised by my grandmother. Single women are phenomenal.
Yes.
They are the heartbeat of our community. But unfortunately, they can't do it alone. And I know the type of man I am, fathers. I think fathers abandoning their children, leaving it to these wonderful, phenomenal single women to raise these children, I think that's part of the problem. Is it the only problem? No, but I was one of those kids that was, you know, looking out the window, waiting for, you know, my aunt or my grandmother to pick me up to go see my father. And when those trips didn't happen, that was disappointment. I was disappointed. So I can imagine the young man that is waiting for his father to come into his life. In some cases, some of these guys are actually in the streets with their fathers. And I think it's a major role. I just look at what I'm doing with my son. I am his biggest influencer. When they talk about superheroes and all of that, my son did a paper. He said, my mom and my dad, they're my superheroes. And I wear that with pride. So he still has years to go and grow. I mean, the book isn't finished, but from what I can tell, he's a stand-up kid. And I just think more fathers, men, need to be engaged with these children. And I'm not just talking about boys, because girls need that same type of leadership.
And I think sometimes we do leave out. You know, there's always seems to be one divide. On one end, a lot of attention will go to the girls and not to the boys. There was a book from the 60s, and you may have heard of it or not. It was, what is it, The Conspiracy to Destroy, I think, Little Black Boys.
Yes, sir.
Right? And so, and it was kind of dealing with the thing where a lot more attention is heaped on the girl and not on the boy. But there's that situation, especially in the climate we're in now, where everybody's trying to make sure that the young man is covered. And that's important, but sometimes in the process, we're leaving out the young ladies. And there are women there are girls and young women that are shooters, that are ballers, or whatever you want to call it, that are out there doing it. So if we're not careful, if we're not covering the community, covering the children, period, not by gender, but by the fact that they're children, then we're going to lose, because if not, we get off balance and kind of go. Let me ask you, what advice would you give to parents, especially of young? I'm going to, and I guess I hope I'm not being hypocritical here, but I want to focus for a second on the young man, or for as much time as we have, which isn't a lot, I just realized. Young boys or young black males are in a very crazy position, and because they're in danger, in some cases, from society, but they're also in danger from other young black men. So, it's not like they have, if I just run from this side of the room over here, I'm okay. Right. It's finding somewhere in the middle that keeps them safe. So what would you say to parents, first with young black boys?
So first and foremost, the way I was raised in terms of, if I did something wrong, I got my butt whooped. I think my son's last spanking, he was 4 years old. And the reason that is I realized it hurt me more than it hurt him. And I know that's a cliche, but it's the truth. I realize now that my son is more hurt knowing that he disappointed me or his mother or anyone else in his village. So, one, you don't have to abuse your child. All you have to do is let that child know, first, you love him, that you've built him up to this point, and when he does something that's wrong, you're disappointed in him. My son self-corrects that behavior. I mean, we just had a situation. He's gotten straight A's for the last 2 years, all 4 quarters. Well, this first report card of 6th grade, he got straight A's except for 2 B's. And that was a problem. And the reason why that's a problem, I know some people would say, well, you're hard on him. Well, no, I have expectations of him. But he had 2 B's at midterm that he had a chance to bring up.
No movement.
No movement. And he's having fun as a 6th grader. And so now it's a little shake in the diagram, so get back on point. And we'll see what happens on at midterm for the 2nd quarter. But fatherhood, I'm building this plane and flying it at the same time. I didn't have my father. And so I do with my son everything that I wanted my father to do with me. If putting stamps on his passport means he's being exposed to the world, I'm exposing him to the world. If me taking him to a community event in Avondale means that I'm exposing him to the world, I'm exposing him to the world. My son is well-rounded, and he's never going to be disrespectful to any adult because of the way I'm raising him. He's not going to be disrespectful to himself, and I'm building him up to be a leader and not a follower. So that's the biggest advice I would give any father. Build your son up, teach him to respect his mother, and if he respects his mother, he respects all the ladies around him, which is, a conversation that I actually have with my son, and I see the time.
Well, I want to thank you definitely for coming on, and I really enjoyed this conversation, just a conversation about our youth and about a father trying to make sure that your son is okay by making sure that the community, or in fact the world that he lives in, as much as possible as you can, to make sure that it's okay. And so that says a lot to me. I know you before today, and I cannot ever say that anytime I've ever seen you, you've just been like a really honorable person. So
well, thank you. I
give God glory for that, and thank you again. Got to get you back. Listen, we want to thank you for spending time. If you're out there, and especially if you're a parent and you have a young black boy or a young black man in your family, what I said is serious. Our young black men are in danger, and the bad part is that it's not just society. And I'm not saying society is horrible, but we're not going to sit here and play games. Let's just be real. There are issues out there that already are trying to swallow up our young black men, and then they've got to worry about being killed in their own community by the person that they know from down the street or around the corner who may have come to their house from time to time. So let's make sure that we take some time out and talk to our young men, but don't forget our young women as well. We've got to take care of our community, because in all honesty, if we're not working on taking care, looking after, and protecting our community, we have absolutely no right to complain that somebody else isn't. Just my 2-cent worth. So we want to thank you for taking time with us. Until next time, stay faithful, stay healthy.